It's Tuesday, November 1. In the headlines, Mike Henry resigns from leadership of the Jamaica Labour Party's Central Clarendon Executive Committee. Regionally, in Antigua, Cannabis Amendment Bill 2022 has been passed. And in sports, Windies under-19 women in training camp. This is the news on PBC Jamaica. I'm Simone Absalom Gale. Veteran parliamentarian and cabinet minister Lester Michael Henry has stepped down as leader of the Jamaica Labour Party's Central Clarendon Executive Committee. Mr. Henry confirmed that he made the decision to accommodate the elevation of his protege, Joel Williams, who has been a member of the Clarendon Municipal Council and a personal assistant for almost 30 years, to become the next candidate. The constituency committee is expected to acknowledge Mr. Williams as his successor and give him enough time to canvass for the selection of a new candidate. Mr. Henry has been the Member of Parliament for Central Clarendon since 1980 and is the longest-serving Jamaican parliamentarian with more than 30 unbroken years in Jamaican Parliament. The tropical storm watch for Jamaica has been discontinued as Tropical Storm Lisa moves away from the island and over the northwestern Caribbean Sea. Despite that, however, the Meteorological Service has forecast that Jamaica could continue to experience periods of rainfall. The center of Tropical Storm Lisa will pass south of the Cayman Islands today and then move near the Bay Islands of Honduras early Wednesday before approaching Belize. Lisa is forecast to become a hurricane on Wednesday over the northwestern Caribbean Sea. Residents are being urged to remain on alert for possible flash flooding in flood-prone areas. Fishers and other small craft operators are also encouraged to exercise caution until wind and sea conditions have returned to normal. The Bank of Jamaica is warning Jamaicans of a scam being circulated via social media, suggesting the bank is offering a financial grant. The central bank says the message, dubbed Bank of Jamaica Support Grant, is fake. The BOJ says anyone who may have been a victim of the message or who can assist in locating its source should contact the police. Less than 7 years remain to achieve the Sustainable Development Goal. Dr. Najat Majid, UN Special Representative of the Secretary General, says many countries are lagging behind.
Because of, first, the socio-economic impact of the pandemic, the ongoing humanitarian crisis, conflicts, climate crisis, the global financial crisis, and the huge displacement of children worldwide due to conflict, due to widespread violence, due to climate crisis. And most importantly, the fact that all the policies, the commitments are really not effectively and duly translated in services that are accessible to all children without discrimination, leaving no one behind, as we promise in the Agenda 2030.
She notes some countries' failure to properly secure vulnerable groups such as children and women.
Due to fiscal constraint and to the budget, we are seeing that the investment in services for children and more widely social services are really currently facing some constraints. And all the states and mainly the ministries of finance have to see that not as additional, social expenses, but really as investment, in economic growth, in human capital. Because just to let you know that violence against children is costing, 5% of the national GDP and 8% of global GDP. So it means that it makes economic sense
to end violence against children in all its forms.
For your information, violence against children is described as emotional or psychological violence. It includes restricting a child's movements, denigration, ridicule, threats and intimidation, discrimination, and more. Violence against children includes all forms of violence against people under 18 years old, whether perpetrated by parents or other caregivers, peers, romantic partners, or strangers. Globally, it is estimated that up to 1 billion children aged 2 to 17 years have experienced physical, sexual, or emotional violence or neglect in the past year. Experiencing violence in childhood impacts lifelong health and well-being. The UN representative says one way to move forward is for countries to stop working in silos.
What is needed is to build on these lessons and to switch from this siloed approach and this initiative approach that are not sustainable to really build cross-sectoral child and gender-sensitive services, when children can find directly and immediately access to protection, to justice, to health, to social protection, to all these services they need in a very prompt way.
Children in Jamaica have a right to be protected from abuse and harm, and those rights are safeguarded in the Child Care and Protection Act, which came into effect in 2004. The legislation promotes the safety and well-being of children across the country. That act provides a comprehensive framework for the care and protection of all children from 0 to 18 years. The 20th staging of the ICWI Jamaica Reach to Recovery Pink Run was a success. It took place on October 30 at the Hope Botanical Garden. More than 6,000 registrants participated. According to the organizers, it exceeded its $5 million fundraising target in aid of Jamaica Reach to Recovery, a charity organization that offers emotional and financial support to individuals in the fight against breast cancer. Here are some highlights.
When we saw the crowd this morning, it was woo! We really are happy for the support that we're getting.
People are really longing to have something like this again. It was amazing.
Studies indicate that more than 30% of patients hospitalized with COVID-19 develop kidney injury, and more than 50% of patients in the intensive care unit with kidney injury may require dialysis. We will hear more about the effect of COVID-19 on the kidney from the Pan American Health Organization in this episode of Living Healthy.
I'm Nicola Barito. A Matter of Fact is designed to inform and educate you about the SARS-CoV-2 virus, which causes COVID-19, while taking an in-depth look at the benefits of vaccination. My guest is Dr. Merle Clark, consultant nephrologist and president of the Medical Anti-Dental Association in St. Lucia. Welcome to A Matter of Fact, Dr. Clark. Dr. Clark, the impact of the COVID-19 virus on the kidneys, coupled with, let's say, long COVID. Let's talk a little bit about that.
COVID-19, there is still a lot that we're learning, but what scientists absolutely know now is that there is such a thing for long COVID, and we are seeing it in approximately 10%, perhaps more, of patients who contract COVID-19, and not necessarily individuals who had severe illness. Individuals also who had mild or moderate illness can have symptoms of long COVID, and it really could affect any organ system. Fatigue is a symptom that we hear complaints about. So there are individuals who months later are not able to go back to work because they're so tired and just not back to the person they were pre-COVID. In my field of nephrology, what we are seeing, and of course we are in the process of compiling data, what we have mostly is the raw data, but the impact of COVID-19 on kidneys is real. So acute infections affecting kidneys is not a new thing, and COVID-19 is not a surprise at all that we saw cases of acute kidney injury in patients who contracted COVID-19, particularly those who ended up in the intensive care unit. So we did have some of that. But I think even more, just based on the data that we've seen, which has not been officially analyzed, the patients who have chronic illnesses, those who from the start were known to be more susceptible perhaps to adverse outcomes if they contracted COVID-19, our diabetics in particular. What we're seeing is progression of baseline kidney disease. So somebody who already had kidney disease, it worsened very rapidly and precipitously after an episode of COVID-19. And that is important because in the Caribbean, our figures for chronic kidney disease are staggering. The cost of providing dialysis for patients with end-stage kidney disease is a burden on the healthcare system in all of the islands. So when we now have to add on those patients who would have progressed rapidly because of COVID-19, they were in an earlier stage and progressed rapidly, that impact study will have to be done. And inevitably it's there. It's just a question of getting the data together and analyzing this raw data.
Dr. Clark, let's talk specifically to St. Lucia. What advice would you give to those persons who may or may not have kidney ailments but are still on the fence about getting the COVID-19 vaccine?
We know that everybody has COVID fatigue at this point, but vaccine, and there's still a lot of hesitancy as it pertains to vaccination in St. Lucia. We are a little under 30% vaccination, which is very unfortunate, but we would like to tell St. Lucians, and I in particular would like to urge the St. Lucian public to get vaccinated. It remains the best tool in our arsenal against COVID-19. There are many questions which are asked. But if people are vaccinated and boosted and can still get COVID, what is the point of getting vaccinated? What we want to encourage St. Lucians to do is get vaccinated because we're not sure, again, the impact of COVID-19. What if that person had not been vaccinated? Could they have ended up in the ICU? So these are the things that we must take into account. What could we have saved the progression, that person from having progression of kidney disease? The fibrosis of the lungs. So many things that could happen if you end up in the ICU unvaccinated, because in as much as we must consider that there are individuals who are vaccinated and still get COVID-19, the data is very clear on the fact that the large majority of patients who develop severe illness or end up in the intensive care units or high dependency units are unvaccinated. That is undeniable. So we'd like to continue to encourage St. Lucians to get vaccinated because it remains the best tool in our arsenal against this disease. And in as much as we're tired of it, it is not done with us yet. We're better off perhaps than we were, in part because some of us have chosen to do the responsible thing in a sense and gotten vaccinated, but all of us must do it. We must be our brother's keepers. We must play our part in this fight against COVID-19.
Time now for the business report with Danita Rodney.
Inventors and entrepreneurs can now access funding support under the Development Bank of Jamaica (DBJ) $100 million patent grant facility. The announcement was made by Christopher Brown, manager for DBJ's Boosting Innovation Growth and Entrepreneurship Ecosystems (Big E) program during a JIS think tank on Thursday, October 27.
We recently launched earlier this week, and it's really helping entrepreneurs, individuals, researchers to be able to file patents for their products or their inventions.
Mr. Brown explains the intent behind the patent grant facility.
The intent, really what we want to do is to get people with ideas, inventors, to be able to create commercial value out of these ideas or inventions. And I would say that one of the steps in doing that is protecting those ideas. Our intention in the future, I would say 2023, is to help those who have those patents to actually create commercial value out of it, whether it is for them to be able to license it elsewhere, maybe they decide to use that and go into a business of their own, or maybe they decide to sell it outright. So commercializing the invention, I would say, is our second step after we've helped people to protect their ideas.
Mr. Brown said that a maximum of $4 million will be provided to each successful applicant and outlines the main requirements for applying.
One of the main requirements is that if you're applying for the fund or the grant, you must have already submitted a filing to the local office, which is JIPO. So that again would indicate a particular intent for you to, really find some utility out of this patent.
He also gives details on the process for application.
We have an application window. It's open between now and the 25th of November. And it's an online application. thinkbiggie.com is the website. If you visit the website, you'll see information about the Patent Grant Fund. And you can apply. It's an online application.
For your market updates, in foreign exchange trading for Monday, October 31, the US dollar sold for an average of $154.13. The Canadian dollar ended trading at $117.43. The pound sterling traded for $177.07, and the euro sold for $153.69. In JSE trading, the JSE index declined by 557 points. The junior market index declined by 98 points. The combined market index declined by 1,412 points, and the All Jamaican Composite Index declined by 1,051 points. Overall market activity resulted from trading in 113 stocks, of which 43 advanced, 51 declined, and 19 traded firm. Stocks advanced for 138 Student Living Jamaica Limited, Access Financial Services Limited, and Caribbean Assurance Brokers Limited. Stocks declined for 138 Student Living Jamaica Limited, Weber Preference, Barita Investments Limited, and Berger Paints Jamaica Limited. Trading firm were AMG Packaging and Paper Company Limited, CAC 2000 9.5% cumulative redeemable preference shares, and Siboney Group Limited. The overall volume leaders were Wigton Wind Farm Limited ordinary shares with over 20 million units, Sagicor Select Funds Limited Financial with over 11 million units, and Dollar Financial Services Limited with over 9 million units. In regional stocks, in Trinidad and Tobago, Clico Investment Fund was the only active security posting over 3,000 shares. On the Barbados Stock Exchange, Insurance Corporation of Barbados Limited was the volume leader with over 13,000 shares. They were followed by Government of Barbados Bond Series B, which traded over 7,000 shares. In international business, after weeks of decline, the British pound has shown signs of recovery. More on what this means by Maya Chung.
The British pound sterling was higher against a weaker US dollar on Tuesday ahead of key meetings at the Bank of England and the Federal Reserve, with both central banks expected to deliver large interest rate increases. Since hitting a record low of 1.0327 in September, sterling has risen over 11%. As the dollar has softened on expectations, the Fed could slow its pace of policy tightening, and as turbulence in British politics subsided with the formation of a new government. Sources to the Reuters news service indicate that positioning is cleaner now, while fundamentals remain extremely poor, and a central bank hiking into recession cannot turn the tide on the currency. The dollar index, which measures the greenback against a basket of 6 currencies, including the pound, was down by 0.4% at 111.05 on improving risk sentiment as Wall Street futures and European equities traded higher. The British pound remains at the mercy of global risk sentiment, strengthening when risk appetite improves and weakening when it deteriorates, said George Vesey, UK currency strategist at Western Union Business Solutions. The Bank of England, BOE, is likely to raise interest rates by 75 basis points when it meets on Thursday, as it attempts to bring double-digit inflation back down towards its 2% target. Reporting for PBCJ News, I'm Maya Chung.
In market data for oil prices rose, recouping losses from the previous session as a weaker US dollar offset the widening COVID-19 curves in China that have stoked fears of slowing fuel demand in the world's second largest oil consumer. Brent crude rose $1.95 to $94.76 per barrel, and West Texas Intermediate crude rose $1.93 to $88.46 a barrel. And that was the business report on PBCJ. I'm Danita Rodney.
In regional news, we start in Trinidad and Tobago. A much-needed upgrade of the country's port operations is on the horizon. That from Works and Transport Minister Rohan Sinanan. Terrian Brown-Campbell has the details.
According to Minister of Works and Transport Rohan Sinanan, government has long been aware of the need to modernize the running of the country's seaports. The minister made the comment as he addressed a webinar to launch the Port of Spain public-private partnership structuring process on Monday.
Since 2014, the port throughput has been steadily decreasing. Turnaround times and containerized movement rates have declined, while port equipment such as cranes are not transferring as many containers as targeted.
The minister noted the Port of Port of Spain handles over 60% of the containers which enter Trinidad and Tobago. Meanwhile, IDB Country Manager Corina Coburn noted that the organization has been working with the government and the Global Infrastructure Facility since the start of 2022 on the initiative.
Alongside the government and GIF, we have defined a very ambitious timeline for PPP project tendering in early 2023. We are committed to supporting Trinidad and Tobago in making this PPP project a reality.
Port Authority Chairman Lyle Alexander estimated that US $200 million direct investment will be spent on the project.
In the Bahamas, good news from the central bank governor, who's predicting the economy will continue to thrive next year, despite global predictions of a recession in the U.S. central bank.
Governor John Rule says it's not in the cards for the Bahamas. He says it's thanks to the pent-up demand in the tourism sector. The news came during the bank's quarterly economic briefing today.
We are experiencing and benefiting from the pent-up demand for travel that was not met or satisfied at the height of the pandemic. And that recovery for us is going to overpower, some of the other negative trends that are out there in the global environment.
Now, Johns Hopkins University economists are predicting a recession in 2023 for the United States. Despite these grim forecasts, Roll is saying otherwise.
Had the global environment presented itself even in a more favorable context, then the sort of recovery and growth that you see for the Bahamas would be even stronger.
In Antigua, the Cannabis Amendment Bill 2022 has been passed in the upper house of Parliament. There was little contention about the efficacy of the amendment, as we hear in this report.
The Cannabis Amendments Bill 2022 was swiftly passed in the Senate early Monday. Senators had little deliberation as the recommendations made by members of Parliament last week quickly moved through the upper house. Leader of Government Business in the Senate, Mary Claire Hurst, tabled the bill.
This important Cannabis Amendment Bill, it is important on all levels, Madam President, all aspects, in terms of involvement, in terms of establishing and constitution of the board, in terms of getting involved, in terms of the types of license, the authorized medical cannabis recommendations, Madam President. This is not anything that is too controversial.
It received wide support from Senator Colin Brown, who venerated the administration of licenses.
Patients' cards will be approximately 130 to 150 EC for a card for a year. Government will be doing a concessionary rate for tourists because of the short period of time that they have here on island. I think that's about 5 to maybe 7 US, yeah, right? The tax revenues to be derived from this, I can just smile to see how much we're going to benefit. So, Madam President, we should not be wasting time with this. I want this to come off so badly.
Opposition Senator Jonathan Joseph had little aversion to the bill's passing.
We recognize that It creates opportunity, economic opportunity. It creates opportunity in terms of medicine, and I do believe that we should seek to take advantage of every opportunity.
In international news, the number of migrants attempting to cross the United States border has more than doubled since President Joe Biden took office in 2020. It is making immigration a hot-button issue in the upcoming midterm elections. Al Jazeera's Kristen Salumi reports.
7-year-old Clifford likes his new school almost as much as he likes ice cream. His mother says she's grateful for the help her family's received in New York after fleeing oppression and a lack of opportunity in Venezuela.
They really welcomed me. They opened their doors for me. They gave me the help that I needed for my children. My son is doing well in school. I came for his future. Well, for all of our futures.
But some parents at Clifford's school have concerns. The city of New York has absorbed 5,500 migrant children in its school system since September.
They need to treat all kids the same, like not just kids that don't speak English or coming from different countries, treat them all the same. You're gonna have a program for the immigrant kids, you have a program for all children.
The children are among some 20,000 asylum seekers who started arriving in New York by the busload in April. The Republican governors of southern border states, dealing with a surge of migrants, began sending them to cities with more liberal immigration policies. And now homeless shelters being used to house the asylum seekers are at capacity. New York's mayor declared a state of emergency.
This is a humanitarian crisis that started with violence and instability in South America. And it is being accelerated by American political dynamics. This crisis is not of our own making, but one that will affect everyone in this city.
Under New York law, no one should have to sleep on city streets if they have a need for emergency shelter. So the city has resorted to putting some of the migrant families into hotels like the Row here, not far from the bus station. But the cost of this is adding up. The mayor says approaching $1 billion. The city built this tent facility to house up to 1,000 men and connect them with services, and is looking for more places to house women and children. The governor has activated a small number of National Guard troops to help at the shelters. But much of the care for the migrants, who have up to a year to file for asylum and can't legally work until they get it, is falling to volunteers, including parents at Clifford School.
They worked with the school administration to organize a huge clothing drive, like for winter clothing and winter accessories and all of that sort of thing.
City officials say they want to welcome the migrants and treat them with dignity, but they need more help from the federal government to do so.
In sports, Cricket West Indies on Sunday announced the squad for the West Indies Women's Under-19 training camp and trial matches to be played next month in Trinidad. Here's more in this report.
The 23 players in the West Indies Women's Under-19 training camp will participate in 2 trial matches on Tuesday, 1st November, and a 3rd trial match on Wednesday, 2nd November. Following these matches, they will have skills and fitness sessions from the 4th to the 6th of November under the guidance of head coach Steve Liebert. This is part of the preparations for the upcoming tour of India from the 7th to the 25th of November. This series in the subcontinent will form a crucial part of the team's preparations for the inaugural ICC Under-19 Women's T20 World Cup in 2023. The global event will feature 41 matches played from the 14th to the 29th of January in South Africa. The official warm-up matches will be from the 9th to the 11th of January. The 16 participating teams will play in 4 groups in the preliminary round. West Indies have been drawn in Group C alongside New Zealand, Ireland and Indonesia. Wayne Cunningham, TTT Sport.
That's it for the news on PBCJ. I'm Simone Absalom Gale. You can follow us on our social media platforms at PBCJamaica. And remember, we are the People's Station.